What's up, guys? My name is Michael, or Kiratze, and I hope you guys are having a great day. I am here for my very first DeckTech for Duelyst, and I'm really excited about this list. This is the list that got me from gold to diamond in about 6 hours, which is a long time, I know. I did a 6-hour stream today, and went from the lowest rank of gold, I believe. I think I was 10. I would think I was rank 10. It might have been 9, but I got to rank 5, which is gold. Now, granted, I've just been playing under 2 weeks, so I'm still fairly new to the game, and I have a lot to learn. So a lot of those, under a better player, I'm sure they could have climbed up much, much faster. So don't let the length of the the time it took me to get to gold, dictate how good this deck is, because I think this deck's actually pretty good, and I think it's a really fun Abyssian list that uses a fair amount of Abyssian spells. Sadly, the quality of minions in Abyssian is fairly lackluster, but a lot of their spells are really good, and I really, really enjoy Abyssian a lot. Abyssian is now the class that I want to main with, and I just want to, figure out every little thing about Abyssian, and I will be doing a lot of DeckTechs, I think, in the future. As you guys know from my pre-Duelyst days, I did a lot of deck building for Magic the Gathering stuff and also Hearthstone stuff, so I've always been a deck builder. I love exploring synergies and fun little ways to try and make an effective deck. So Duelyst will definitely be the same. I hope a lot of you guys will come into my stream and ask questions. Just have a good time, and also comment on the video, ask questions about the decks, and yeah, I just really want to get involved in the Duelyst community, because the Duelyst community is really, really nice, and I really, really enjoy talking to a lot of you. Sorry. In my chat and stuff like that, and it's a nice little tight-knit community, and I hope there's more people like me who still like to win, but who like to explore their own ways of doing so, as opposed to just doing the net decking. And I have nothing wrong against net decking. Don't get me wrong. I'm not hating on net deckers. I'm not hating on people who just play the top decks. Not at all. Not at all. I'm just saying what I enjoy doing, and everyone's different. So, all right. So this is my Grindy Burst Abyssian deck. So this, I guess, a little bit of background. I love doing sort of just explaining the ideas behind my decks. Just sort of help you guys see where I come from in choosing how I want to build a deck. So after sort of realizing, okay, I sort of want to try out Abyssian and maining Abyssian, I started looking at other decks. It's always good for inspiration and stuff like that, seeing what cards work and what cards absolutely flat out don't work. And I came across Smash Things Chaos Blade aggro deck, which is on the forums if you want to check it out. And also shout out to Smash Things. He came by the stream today, and we talked about Abyssian for a little bit. So awesome, cool dude. Glad he's exploring Abyssian as well. And he was running an interesting card called Chaos Elemental, which was one of the core cards in the deck. And before, when I was fooling around with this list, I had a fairly different list. I ran 2 Shadow Dancers, and I also ran... what's the card called? Oh gosh, I'm totally blanking on the card. The neutral card. Sworn Avenger. I ran this card because I was having a sort of the idea of, okay, let's try and make it a little bit grindy, get a little ping damage here and there with Sworn Avenger. It'll be all good. Yeah, well, Sworn Avenger is pretty terrible. Maybe I think Songhai would be the only deck who'd make it really, really work. Maybe Vitruvian, because you can protect your cards fairly well in Vitruvian. But overall, Sworn Avenger was a little lackluster. Sometimes it worked out, but more often than not, it just didn't really do much. And the 3 health just makes it die to a lot of things like Tempest and things like that. So it was a little lackluster. And then I saw Chaos Elemental in his deck, and I was like, well, I don't know. I'll try it out. I love good statted minions, and the idea behind this deck is it's almost like a mid-rangey deck, but we have a lot of tools to deal with aggro in the list and a lot of threats to deal with control. So it is almost like a mid-rangey list, but you really just got to... The core of the deck is realizing when you need to turn corner and go face. Because one of the things about Abyssian is they got quite a bit of burn damage, and they got quite a bit of burst damage, thanks to cards like Shadow Reflection and Night Zoro Assassin. So it's really just knowing your matchup, knowing what cards to play around, things like that. But I think it's a fairly solid deck. And actually, other than Chaos Elemental, you'll notice another 3-drop that's a little on the interesting side, Venom Toth. And I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, the idea behind this deck is sort of recognizing your matchup, knowing if you should play aggressively or you shouldn't, and getting in small amounts of damage when you can, and while taking efficient trades until you can burst them down. So you're playing sort of a grindy game with Venom Toss almost, but also just grindy in the sense that you're hitting them with your general, getting in small amounts of damage with Saber Spines and things like that until you can sort of burst them down. We're not a flat out aggro deck. We're not full face unless we need to be. Again, it's all about depending on the matchup, because we have a lot of tools to sort of be both almost. And it's a very interesting list, I think. A couple interesting choices, but that's what I like about it. It's sort of my own list, and the fact that it's climbing fairly well, I really like it. Makes me happy. It makes me happy when a deck I make succeeds somewhat. So let's go through each card, and I'll sort of just have a brief little stint about it. And hopefully you guys enjoy this deck tech. 2 Grasp. Also, this isn't finalized. I'm always, as a deck builder, you're always changing cards and swapping things out. But this is the core list I have right now. That sort of got me to gold, I guess, or to diamond. Sorry. So 2 Grasp is Agony. It's sort of a flex spot. You could probably make room for a third one if you felt like you were playing against a lot of aggressive decks. But it's just one of Abyssian's best cards. You can do quite a few 2-for-1s, possibly 3-for-1s, and deal face damage. A lot of different things you can do with it. And it because Abyssian lacks a lot of good AoE removal, we need Grasp of Agony, especially to clear the way for our either rush minions to get through or just our general to get damage in. It's quite necessary. And for 1 mana, it's really, really good. So, and it also deals damage to their face, possibly. So I really like the Grasp of Agony. 2 Voice Pulses. We're not full aggro, and we already have other ways of healing, so we don't really need 3 of them. But it is nice to fill your turn if you have a 1 mana floating. But it's also nice against decks like Songhai or anything artifact heavy. Allows you to deal with a charge fairly quickly while getting some health back. It's a really great card against Songhai. Helps you race and usually deals with a charge on the artifact. But again, we don't really want 3. 3 Demonic Lures, though, because it's one of Abyssian's best cards, allows us to control the early game fairly easily, can deal with Jaxes and stuff like that, and also just helps us control the board a little more. You are sort of board controlling with this deck, and just chipping in damage when you can before bursting them. Again, sort of going with that grindy aspect. And yeah, not much to say there. It's just really, really solid card. It's just much more effective than a card like Repulsor Beast, for example. Just because it's a spell, we can just use it anywhere. It costs 1 mana less, and your minion doesn't have to be right beside the other minion to get use out of it. So very, very nice. And it deals 1 damage, so it's nice to kill off anything that is at that 1 health total if you need to. 1 Flameblood Warlock. I used to run 2, but I felt that I was drawing 1 a little bit too frequently, and you don't really want it. It's more just the extra burn. It's also another way to deal with artifacts, which is nice, but it can be awkward when you're also running artifacts, and your artifacts are really, really good and important in a lot of different matchups. So getting rid of one of your own charges is not something you want to do. And again, we're not total face damage, so you don't really care about having a lot of this burn. But we do need the extra burn just for some of those points where we want to close out games. It's just an extra burn spell, essentially, with the possibility, in the rare chance that it might get an extra 3 damage in. Doesn't really happen too often. They usually just deal with it with another creature, but it can trade with something possibly and still have the damage hitting them in the face. So overall, just 1 of it is fine. When you want to start searching for it, you can, but otherwise you don't want to draw it really too often. 3 Healing Mystics is just one of the game's best neutrals. I'm sure most of us would agree with that. Not much to say there. It's just a good card to race and stuff like that. 2 Jaxi. So I also used to run 3. But the more I played this deck, you'll notice we actually don't have a lot of 2-drops. I realized this deck isn't super reliant on having a turn 2 opening play, which is sort of a weird aspect, I know. But our 3 mana creatures are fairly effective at dealing with anything going on, and the fact that we're running Spectral Blades and stuff like that, and we have some early board control through Grasp of Agonies and Demonic Lures, we can control the board early enough where we can start putting out our mid-game minions. And Spectral or Jaxi, I don't really like drawing late game. I feel it's, other than just a body blocker, it can be a little impactful, or not really impactful, sorry. But you just need a certain amount of 2-drops, I think, in a deck, and it is still nice as an early drop. helps you contest the board. And, you know, if it gives you another target for Shadow Reflection, possibly if they can't deal with that 1/1, you can slap on Shadow Reflection, and it's a 6/1 with range. So start getting in a lot of board control and damage through that as well. Excuse me. Oh, stuff in my throat. But yeah, not much to say there. It's just another solid neutral. Again, a lot of people would agree Jaxie's really strong. 3 Spectral Blades is just one of... I really like the card. I really enjoy Spectral Blade. It's a way for you to just trade up, and it allows you to focus more on board control while you're placing your own minions, rather than using your own minions to trade with stuff. In this kind of deck, you actually are wanting to use your health as a resource. This deck really takes advantage of that aspect of this game, using your general's health as a resource. It's really good against the aggressive decks as an opener, dealing with multiple things potentially, and healing you and keeping your health total fairly high so you can sort of race them. And worst case scenario, you can just go face with it, and it's 12 damage over a few turns if they can't deal with it. I really like Spectral Blade. You having your general as a source of removal is really, really strong. 3 Chaos Elementals. So this was the interesting one that I added from Smash Things list. It sort of inspired me to put it in mine. It's a really good card. I really like Chaos Elemental. So the idea behind Chaos Elemental is it improves your Magmar matchup because it dodges Plasma Storm, but it's aggressive enough that they have to deal with it somehow. It also doesn't die to like Plasma Storm or Mana Burn or anything like that. Now people usually focus on the teleportation to the random space. So the idea with this deck is you don't really care about that. If anything, you may get the chance of it being a bonus, but the downside of it is sort of non-apparent. So you're almost getting immediate value out of this card because it does one of few things. You're going to draw out a strong type of removal from your opponent. It's going to trade off with one of their small minions, and that's fine. It's still a threat on the board once it actually teleports. Regardless of where it teleports, it allows you to put more minions at that location, so you can get more sort of varied board control, which is important for a deck like this when you sort of want to find ways to throw your burst creatures in. So it can do that, or they can hit them. They can hit it with their general to deal with it that way, and then deals 4 damage. So that's extra burn. That's really important for this deck to close out games. Or it just makes your opponent's turns fairly awkward. It's a great opener going turn 2, and also it's a very proactive card going when you're going first as well. So I really like the card a lot. Yeah, not much to say there. And sometimes, again, like I said, you can get the bonus of it just teleporting to a pretty advantageous spot for you. Have had a lot of times where my opponent sort of pings it and it just teleports right next to them, so it's an immediate threat, and they still have to hit it with their general or something like that, so it's done its job. It's just a good early drop. It's, of course, a little bit lesser so when the longer the game goes on, but even still, it's still a 4/4 body that you can put out for 3 mana. So you can, if you need that extra body on board, it still makes some turns awkward to deal with, and they still have to take the worst case for them, random chance that it may spawn into a disadvantageous spot for them. So it's a troublesome card. Both Chaos Elemental and Venom Toth are sort of key cards in this deck, and they both sort of create awkward situations for your opponent, which is this deck really takes advantage of. This deck tries to take advantage of making your opponent's turns fairly ineffective, or less effective, I guess I should say. 3 Night Sorrow Assassin is just one of Abyssian's best cards. 4 damage for 3 mana, not much to say there. It's going to be 4 damage, 3 mana, regardless of if you're trading with it or if you are going face with it. Not much to say. It combos well with Shadow Reflection for a 9 damage kill at 6 mana, or at 6 core. So you can get in a lot of damage fairly fast with this card. Or trade up with like an Emerald if you need to. Saberspine Tiger. We just need more Rush minions. It gives an additional target for Shadow Reflection in the late game. 1 less damage than Night Sorrow, but that's all right. It's still 8 damage for 6 mana. And it's just a solid neutral. Again, it's like Healing Mystic. People, you can't really argue that it's a terrible card. It's a good card. It can be removal or it can be face damage. And again, in a deck like this where you're trying to play both sides depending on the matchup, you can use it quite effectively. Shadow Reflection, 2 of them. 3 would be a little too much for the type of deck we're playing. Again, we're not playing a full face deck with a lot of, every single rush minion around or things like that. But it is 5 damage for 3 mana, essentially the turn you play it. It allows you to trade up if you need to with a really, really large monster, but more often than not, it's going to go face. And as long as you have a body on board, you're going to do a lot of damage. So 2 is just the perfect amount. We draw it often enough when we need it, and it gives us enough copies that we can search for it late game when we actually want to close it out as well. Sorry, I'm just going to take a quick drink. I apologize if that was a little loud. All right. 3 Venom Toth. So this is sort of the key card of the deck. This is where the grindy aspect, or where the mainly part of the grindy aspect comes from. So people are going to look at this, and this is sort of what makes the deck unique, in my opinion. I mean, no one really runs this card. And when I looked at this card, I tried to figure out ways to utilize it in a deck. And I think Abyssian really takes advantage of that, because they have some good tools to dictate the pace of the game, and Venom Toth is just an additional tool for that. Again, like Chaos Elemental, it's a little bit awkward to deal with in the sense that you don't really feel good using up removal on it, but it does bait out removal. This card's great using it as an opener or an early drop, and it's good against the decks where you're trying to race, provides more pressure, and they have to spend resources to deal with it. So it's also really good in the Vitruvian matchup. So yes, it can get dispelled right off the bat, but you are drawing out a dispel, which makes cards like Reaper of the Moon much more effective. It's a baiter. Venom Toth is essentially a baiter, but it's a baiter where even if you don't get the bait of removal, it just provides so much value over the course of the game. It's good in Songhai because if they're playing a minion-based matchup, not the no minion-based matchup, obviously. If they're playing minions and they have artifacts on, they're actually going to be taking damage. So they have to make an efficient turn usually in terms of just removing the creature before they actually play their minions. Otherwise, they'll just end up taking artifact charge damage. Getting their artifacts removed for pretty much nothing. And it also just helps you race. So it's once Venom Toth sticks, I find it's not very uncommon for it to deal, on average 4 to 5 damage. So for 3 mana, dealing 4 to 5 damage and having a 3/3 body on the board is really, really good. I think that's a good card. Now, either that or it draws out removal. But you still get the body. And our deck can utilize bodies fairly well in terms of just trading or using it for burst with Shadow Reflection. So it's still fine if it gets dispelled or removed, because it's just, some less removal that your opponent's going to have for other creatures. And again, like I said, it makes their turns efficient. So they're spending usually a turn removing the minion, but not being able to progress their board. And if we can sort of have that switch where we become the aggressor, we can really just keep putting on pressure and sort of take the game from there, which is the idea of the deck. But yeah, this deck's really good against Vitruvian if they don't have the Dispel, because they have a lot of spawning type effects. Star's Fury, stuff like that. And they can take a ton of damage. I actually was playing against a Vitruvian. This isn't Vitruvian class based, but I was playing against a Vitruvian, like a control type Vitruvian, and I had Venom Toth on the board, and he obviously didn't have the Dispel or the way to deal with it because I was protecting it. But he didn't. I guess his hand was really bad, or what. But I guess he felt he had to play Jack's True Sight, and he ended up taking 5 damage just for playing Jack's True Sight because my Venom Toth was on the field. And actually, in the long run, that won me the game because I was able to close out the game much sooner with that and get lethal much faster. So Venom Toth has been really, really good. It's I know what people are going to say, especially in like Magmar matchups, it dies to Plasma Storm and things like that, but we try and get a lot of value out of our minions early on, and I don't find I overextend too much with this deck because a lot of our cards don't last that long. We try and get value out of them in the first 1 or 2 turns that they're played, and then that's that, and then we've got what we needed out of them. So if I play a Venom Toth and the game goes on and I'm using my rush minions and just trading into the general and stuff like that, well, if they feel they want to, sure, they can spend 4 mana and a Plasma Storm to deal with my Venom Toth, but it's not really that effective. And also in Magmar, it actually is pretty cool because the egg that comes out of their Rebirth minions does an extra damage to them. So their Rebirth minions potentially have the effect of just dealing 2 damage back to them if we can deal with the egg, or if we can deal with the first half of the creature, which is nice. So Venatoth is pretty interesting. It creates some weird situations for your opponent, and our Abyssian can take a really good advantage of that. I think it's a card that can sort of dictate the pace of the game almost, in some ways. And yeah, you're gonna have two outcomes. It's either gonna stick on the board and deal 3 to 5 damage probably, or it's going to bait out some good removal. Not much to say there. Yeah, star of the deck. It actually has won me quite a few games, and it was surprisingly good. 2 Emerald Rejuvenators. So just a staple 4-drop in a lot of decks. It's just good healing. We do use our general health as a resource, and a lot of the time we are going to take quite a bit of damage that way. Helps in the Songhai matchups, helps in the really, really aggressive matchups just to keep going face and racing them, and then just playing Emerald Rejuvenator and getting that health back. Just a solid 4-drop. 2 Dark Transformations. I used to play 1. Felt I wasn't getting it enough, and again, it's a card we just sort of need almost as Abyssian. We don't have a lot of ways to deal with stuff if we don't have a body on board, and Dark Transformation is just hard removal. In a deck like this, you want hard removal. There are just some creatures and stuff like that we just have to deal with, but we can't get access to, or don't want to use up the burn, because a lot of our damage, all of our damage and burn comes from our creatures, obviously. But sometimes you don't. Sometimes you're in a situation where you still need to keep that burn for just closing out the game, but you still need to remove a certain creature. Dark Transformation can help with that. It is a little bit expensive, but we as Abyssian, we don't have much else. I mean, you could run what's the card? You could run what's the card? Ritual Banishing, but again, it's not that great. We're getting rid of one of our creatures to destroy another creature for 3 mana. Not too good. So yeah, it's just sort of needed, especially in the Lionar matchups and Magmar matchups. It's just very, very good to have this card. And Songhai too. Songhai, if they buff a really big creature and then teleport it away out of range of our other stuff, sometimes we just need to use Dark Transformation. Reaper of the Nine Moons. So this used to be Shadow Dancer, but I tried out the Reapers thanks to a viewer suggestion, and they've been working out much better. It's just a better threat. I sort of was going along with a theme of grindiness with Venatoth and Shadow Dancers, but we didn't have, because we're getting a lot of value pretty fast, and then just trading up our minions and stuff like that. We don't have enough bodies to get a lot of value out of Shadow Dancer, sadly. And Reaper is just a solid threat. It's great against control because you can have the chance of possibly just getting Silithar Elder out, or just a really big threat of theirs, and it actually steals it out of their deck. So they aren't able to draw it, or they have one less copy to draw of it. So it's a sticky minion, which is, this deck is really, really big on trying to have that effect too. So in addition, the flying is really, really nice because it allows you to play it just in a place where you can protect it. And still get value out of it the next turn if your opponent has no way of dealing with it. You can just fly it over pretty much wherever. It's a little bit... It obviously makes the aggro matchups worse, just because their quality of minions are a little bit less, so you're not going to get something super amazing usually. But you're still getting a body. You're still getting something sticky that they'll have to deal with and spend more resources to deal with. In addition, that it can possibly just get 5 damage into the opposing general, which is quite a bit of damage. And playing against Magmar is really nice too, because you can get you can trade with it, get Macantor Warbeast and have the rush. It's really good if your opponent has a lot of rush minions. So Reaper of the Nine Moons I really, really like. Just a solid threat. 2 Zenrui the Blightspawn. So here's another interesting choice, and this isn't really the type of deck you would try and see it in, but that's all right. Sorry, I was just looking at my phone there. It's sort of an interesting card. It's like Cabal Shadow Priest in Hearthstone. I really like the card though. When we're sort of dictating the pace of the game, and sort of it sort of punishes the opponents for playing small minions, obviously, but also punishes them for just sort of throwing things out there as body blockers like Jaxes and stuff like that. Because stealing Jaxes is a huge swing in tempo, and pretty much you don't really care about what you steal, just because it's pretty much a removal spell with developing 2 bodies on the field at once, which is really, really good. And from there, it's just it's a huge swing and tempo. Zenrui's just been really, really good. I added it mainly also because it's good in the Vitruvian matchup, being able to steal their portals, steal their obelisks, things like that. It creates, again, some awkward situations for them. And it's a card that just gives you instant value. So once you do steal something, it's still a 4/3 body that they have to deal with. In addition, they just had one of their creatures removed, and you've gained an additional creature. So it's a flex spot. I think you could obviously play other stuff if you feel they're better, but I really like the Zenrui. I know we don't really have anything to combo with it, but it's a way for us to sort of stay ahead on the board, and also it's good against the aggro matchups when you're trying to race, just being able to steal one of their bodies for damage and stuff like that. So yeah, not much to say there. One of the more interesting choices, but I really like the card. You could probably experiment with other stuff, but so far I'm really liking the Zenruis. Spectral Revenant, 2 of them. It's one of Abyssian's best creatures. I love this card. It's so good. A removal spell with face damage, pretty much is what it says. When you play it, you get instant value out of it. You can run it into the opponent general for 6 damage in addition to whatever else you have on the board. But more often than not, you're going to kill something. It's going to deal 4 damage to them, and it's going to stay on the board. So unless you're dealing with a big creature, you're still going to have Spectral Revenant on board for them to deal with, and they'll have to expend resources dealing with it that aren't usually creature related. If they are going to spend creature related stuff on it, unless it has backstab or something, they're going to take an additional 4 damage. So over the course of 2 turns, they could potentially have 2 of their creatures removed and have done 8 damage to them, which is amazing. Not much to say there. Spectral Revenant is just a way for us to close out games. It's a great late game turn play. Usually I find with this deck, you're going to be about even on where you're at on the board, whether neither of you guys have minions or you maybe have 1 or 2 each. So you try and create really big swings in tempo with cards like Spectral Revenant. But yeah, it's just a big threat. Not much to say there. It can just help close out games, and again, it sort of goes along with the idea of it allows us to focus on board control while still getting damage in. It's the same thing with Venom Toth. We can chip in damage and just focus on clearing their minions. While they play more, they're just going to take more damage unless they don't deal with it, and until we can just close out the game with big burst. So that is Grindy Burst Abyssian. I hope you enjoyed this deck tech. And yeah, I hope you try out the list and let me know what you think, and let me know what kind of changes you would make, because I am looking to improve this deck. Right now, this is the list I'm running. This is the list I'm really, really happy with, and it's been working out so well so far. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, or just come to my stream when I'm streaming. I'll probably be playing Abyssian, but I'll definitely be playing a lot of other stuff as well. And all that information will be down in the description below, as well as the written deck tech for this, which I will post on the forums, and to go along with the VOD of today's stream, so you can see sort of this deck in action in all its glory. But yeah, take care, you guys. Hope you guys have a great night, day, morning, wherever you are, and I will be back with another deck tech in the future.